Hey, what's going on? It's Inventor here, with my Dance of Knives rogue in Diablo 4 Season 9. I just cleared Pit 55 to unlock Torment 4, so I wanted to share my build with you in case anyone was struggling to reach the endgame with a Dance of Knives rogue. In this build guide, I'm going to cover my character, abilities, progression, and other relevant information. So first, I'll talk about my gear. Gear. For my tempers, my weapons mostly had the Agile Augments recipe for Dance of Knives double damage until 100%. Then I would have used Elemental Surge Knight for cold damage otherwise, but I wasn't able to reach 100% chance for Dance of Knives with the current level of equipment that I had. For my offensive tempers, I mostly run the Cutthroat Finesse recipe. In past seasons, I ran Concealment to Snapshot Permacrit and Vulnerable on Dance of Knives, but they removed that in Season 9. So most items I have will be Cutthroat attack speed up to 100%, and I run Cutthroat crit strike chance otherwise. When it comes to defensive tempers, here I ran resistances since I was struggling to reach the resistance caps, but ideally I want Concealment cooldown reduction. Resource tempers were mainly subterfuge cooldown reduction to further reduce the cooldown on concealment. On my amulet, I had Dark Shroud cooldown reduction instead, but that's because I ran out of tempers. On utility tempers, I have Chilling Weight to increase chill, which helps stagger bosses quicker. Although I did use +2 cold imbuements casts on my helm just to make it easier to use my skill rotation. My mobility temper preferably would be generic plus movement speed. Plus 100% movement speed from all bonuses like momentum should be a given to help refill the charges on Dance of Knives. Unfortunately though, I only ended up with movement speed after killing an elite after going through all my temper charges. When it comes to affixes, every item slot could use dexterity, especially as a GA, and max life if possible. Then I wanted large DPS increases like attack speed, crit chance, rank of Dance of Knives, or passives like exploit, yada yada yada. Aside from offensive stats though, on most items I would want armor, or resistances to help keep me alive on higher torments as well. For aspects, let's start off with my weapons. I had Edge Masters on my bow, Star Shards on my sword, and True Sight on my other sword. Edge Masters gives my skills more damage based on primary resource, and I am always at full energy. So this aspect gives up to 50% more damage just by itself. Star Shards, on the other hand, does not boost multiplicative damage, but the chance for Dance of Knives to shatter on hit contributes a significant amount of damage, even though I do not use the second half of the aspect. Instead of combo points, I run Inner Sight, which goes hand in hand with True Sight here, where I get more damage whenever Inner Sight is active. But the other half of this aspect gives me a huge damage boost against single targets, in particular bosses. On my helm, I run Disobedience aspect here, so that I have enough armor to survive. This helm has Dex, GA max life, and all resistances too. Godslayer Crown would be much better if I had enough armor and resistances to survive in T4. If I recall correctly, I didn't find a Godslayer Crown before my Pit 55 clear on this character either. On my chest armor, I had GA Dex with Juggernaut's aspect. Again, this is where my armor comes from, and the evade penalty does not matter too much because I'm usually channeling Dance of Knives anyway. My gloves are Cold Clip aspect with dexterity, attack speed, and crit chance. So whenever monsters are chilled or frozen, so against bosses, this would be when they get staggered. For most other monsters, this is after getting hit enough times with my cold imbued Dance of Knives, then I do bonus damage to them. The issue here is that I actually would have preferred the aspect Clandestine, where I would have gotten 3 ranks to my agility and subterfuge skills. This would be a big boost to my concealment and to Dance of Knives, but as fate would have it, I still didn't unlock it even after I had already reached Torment 4. So this was the second best aspect I could come up with at the time. So for my pants, I run Tybalt's for damage while unstoppable. Due to Stolen Vigor aspect and the concealment skill, the Tybalt's unique effect is pretty much a 1.2x damage multiplier that's active all the time. My boots are Mired Sharpshooter's aspect with Dexterity, Max Life, and Dance of Knives. Not too much to say here in terms of the affixes, but the reason I have this aspect is because it turns Caltrops into a marksman skill and allows them to apply vulnerable. The vulnerable is one thing, but turning Caltrops into a marksman skill makes it much easier to trigger, if I can find it here, the Tricks of the Trade legendary node, where if I damage monsters with my marksman skills, so in this case Caltrops, then enemies that get hit by my cutthroat skills, so Dance of Knives in this case, would take 30% more damage. So that's what I ran for my boots. There's other options like Nebulous Bruise, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. My amulet had GA Dexterity with Mired Sharp, it had a synergy aspect with GA Dex, crit chance, and poison resistance. So for synergy aspect, if I use an agility skill, it reduces the cooldown of my next subterfuge skill by 30%. But the second half of this is that using a subterfuge skill, so in this case, if I were to open up with Smoke Grenade, then it would increase the damage of my next agility skill, Dance of Knives, by 83%. That's a pretty massive increase. The other modifiers on this, though, the GA Dex is a pretty nice damage boost by itself. I got crit chance. That's because that was the best available modifier that I was, or the best available affix I was able to roll at the occultist. Ideally, I would have liked Ranks of Exploit or one of the other passives on my skill tree that boost my damage, even something like Deadeye if that were an available option, or Malice or something like that would have been great, but crit chance was the best I could do. So that's what I ended up rolling with. And the poison resistance is sort of nice to round out my resistances too. On my ring, my first ring was Stolen Vigor on a GA Dexterity ring. This ring has Max Life and GA Lucky Hit too. The Lucky Hit isn't as important here, but it was the best ring I had, although I would have preferred to get attack speed in place of Lucky Hit chance on this ring. I already briefly talked about the aspect on this before, but I do have the Momentum Key passive. When that's active or maxed out, then this aspect gives me increased damage, like almost 50% increased damage, and I become unstoppable every 3 seconds for 6 seconds. That helps a lot because it prevents monsters from CCing me and interrupting my Dance of Knives channel. So very nice to have aspect here. My second ring was Pit Fighter's Gull, unique with GA on Smoke Grenade cooldown reduction. So this is helpful because it amps up crit damage by 45% whenever I use Smoke Grenade. Whenever I go and fight a pack, I would open up with a Smoke Grenade. This would also trigger my Herodic powers. I'll talk about that later though. But Of course, I get the 45% damage increase, or crit strike damage increase from Pit Fighter's Gull, which in turn boosts my damage by a lot, and I also get stealth when I use Smoke Grenade initially. So those two things are actually quite helpful, and the Smoke Grenade cooldown reduction pretty much guarantees that Smoke Grenade has around zero, or it pretty much has no downtime, right? So that's what I have for my second ring, and that kind of rounds it out for all my equipment. In my sockets, I ran emeralds in my armor slots for more dexterity, which in turn gives me more damage. I had emeralds in my one-handed weapons for more crit strike damage, gems to boost armor and resistances in my jewelry sockets, and runes would go into my bow and pants. I was limited on options for runes because I just didn't find too many, and the ones I found weren't particularly amazing in my opinion. So I preferred emeralds instead, but the one rune word I had was Kurtun to get stun grenades for more CC. If I had more runes, there are other rune word combinations I could have used, like Yak's Ohm to apply a war cry after drinking some potions, Bakwat to cast Horrid Decrepify for CC and execute when I travel some distance, and so on. For my elixirs and incense, like I usually do, especially if running the pit, then I run stats, life, armor, and resistances. Herodic powers. My catalyst was Disintegrate on Smoke Grenade. My infusion was Glacial Nimbus for the cold damage and chill effect. My arcanas were Bloody Charm for execute, Fractured Core for damage resistance aura removal, and Tranquil Stone to give me unstoppable. So I throw Smoke Grenade to activate Disintegrate's beam and trigger Unstoppable. Then after my skill rotation, I line up the Disintegrate beam's damage and Arcana effects with the monsters I'm dancing around to do damage. So I use Smoke Grenade, I activate Dance of Knives, and I spin around whatever monsters are in the area. Skills. Now, I'm not going to go over every single point that I put into my skill tree, but what I will say is that I prioritized a lot of damage passives on the skill tree, and I maxed out Dance of Knives and Cold Imbuement while running the Shadow Clone Ultimate. But the one key passive that I will talk about here is Momentum, which gives move speed, damage resistance, and damage. On my skill bar, I ran Caltrops, Smoke Grenade, Concealment, Shadow Clone, Dance of Knives, and Cold Imbuement. The playstyle here is pretty simple. Throw Caltrops first to boost damage, then Smoke Grenade to CC and increase damage, Concealment for unstoppable, crit, vulnerable, Shadow Clone if it's a big pack or a boss for more damage, Cold Imbuement to chill monsters and convert damage to cold, and then spin to win. So if I put this all together, Caltrops, Smoke Grenade, Concealment, Shadow Clone, Cold Imbuement, and then Dance of Knives. And worth noting that there is the Disintegrate beam right in the middle. It just wore off, but if these monsters were damage resistance aura, then that would have actually removed it. Last but not least, I talked about this very briefly earlier, but on my specializations, I am running Inner Sight. Combo points are one option if you want an alternative, and then you can run that with the Star Shard aspects specifically. But in this case, since I'm running True Sight, I consider it to be far better to have Inner Sight because we get a lot more damage this way using the True Sight aspect. Paragon. When I cleared Pit 55, I spent 187 Paragon points, which is roughly around Paragon level 150. I used the starting board with Devious Glyph, Dance Macabre with Canny Glyph, Eldritch Bounty without a glyph, Tricks of the Trade with Versatility Glyph, and Exploit Weakness with Headhunter Glyph. I had the Canny and Headhunter glyphs at rank 46 or above for their legendary bonus, and the Versatility and Devious glyphs at rank 15 plus for their radius increase. If I could fill out my last remaining glyph socket, I would use something like Efficacy, Combat, Control, or Fluidity. Fluidity would be the safest bet among these because it gives a bonus whenever you use an agility skill, so in this case Dance of Knives, which means that anytime you're casting Dance of Knives, Fluidity aspect or Fluidity glyph would actually take effect. Mercenaries. For my mercenaries, I had Rahir as my hired mercenary to round out my resistances and also to increase my damage. For my reinforcement, I had Variana to use Ancient Harpoons so I could pull monsters in while leveling. But I forgot to switch over to Bloodthirst for attack speed on Dance of Knives. Progression. From level 1 to 60, leveling with Dance of Knives is ridiculously easy. Shadow Imbuement and Dance of Knives should dogwalk the entire game all the way until you reach at least Torment 1. Start by completing the first quest on the seasonal quest line in Karagar. This will unlock your Heraldric powers and the reputation board. Then you can pretty much just run Helltides non-stop until level 60. You can run normal difficulty until you can temper plus damage on all of your gear with natural finesse. But once you have your damage tempers, you could probably just play on Penitent for the rest of your leveling run to maximize your XP gain. Now moving on to Torment 1 to 4. In Torment 1, run Heraldric Strongrooms mainly for the Arcana and Heraldric Files to upgrade your powers. If you do not have Heraldric Strongroom Nightmare Sigils, you can do the seasonal quest line to pick some up. These Nightmare Dungeons should also give XP, Ancestrals, Obdicite, and Artificer's Stones. Regarding Torment 2, I usually push for Torment 2 once I get 1 or 2 legendary nodes on my Paragon board. You should unlock Torment 2 ASAP so that you can turn in Whisper rewards on Torment 2 to increase their rewards. When you reach Torment 2, the priority should be on running Helltides and Whispers for boss mats, tempering recipes, aspects, and gold. Also, boss fights are a bit difficult on Torment 3 for this build without good gear, so I would recommend Torment 2 as a place to comfortably farm bosses for uniques when starting out. When it comes to Torment 3, focus on running the pit in Karagar for more Paragon points and glyphs. Before you take on Pit 55 to unlock Torment 4, you should have at least 4 legendary nodes on your Paragon board and level up 1 or 2 glyphs to rank 46 for their legendary bonus. In addition, you should have enough Obdicite from Reputation Rewards and Nightmare Dungeons to masterwork all of your equipment to at least rank 4. All of these put together should get you into Torment 4. There you have it, the Dance of Knives Rogue. This build excels at speed farming in lower torments as always, but can struggle in Torment 3 onward without the right setup. However, with this season's difficulty adjustment for the pit and torment monster scaling, Dance of Knives feels a lot better than it did last season, so I definitely think it's worth at least trying out. I hope this helps. If you made it this far, then a like, comment, or subscribe is always appreciated. But otherwise, that's all for me. Thanks everyone for watching, and venture out.